Accommodation Show, everybody. I am pleased to welcome Sam Trattles to the show, and we will be talking about negotiating. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bart. I love your enthusiasm for negotiating.
Thanks a lot. And I am really enthusiastic about this. I actually woke up this morning and I was talking to my partner. I said, I'm going to be doing an awesome episode because I'm going to be talking about something that we've never covered before. And actually talking to someone who's an expert like yourself in negotiating and has made it your work to really go deep on this topic and understand it, it's fascinating. And I almost got nervous to book you in for this episode in case you start to try to negotiate with me.
I get that a bit, yeah. I promise I won't today. Oh, yeah. Hang on, I might be making that up.
Yeah, so look, Sam, we got connected because you've just published your second book, which is a bestseller on Amazon. So congratulations, well done. I would love you to introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are, what you get up to, maybe a tiny fraction about the book, or maybe we can talk about the book at the very end. But yeah, I'd really love to know, or for you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you. So I love negotiating, which sounds very strange. I also love strategy, but two things that people don't love. So I totally understand that. So I've spent my entire career working in corporates up until about 6 or 7 years ago, and I negotiated for my job. So head of sponsorship, head of brand and sponsorship for various businesses. I've worked in Europe and Australia for big banks, Telstra in Australia and PricewaterhouseCoopers around the world. So had an awesome portfolio to look after being in those roles and negotiated really great things. But in the process, learnt the good, the bad and the ugly at the deals table. So when I walked out of corporate some time ago, I was like, well, what would I do every day if I could do one thing? And that was negotiating. And I realized that people hate it. And really good friends of mine hated it. And I was just like, hang on, you're really senior and you're really smart and you don't mind asking me for things. So what's the block here? So for me, it was about understanding, okay, maybe I know some stuff that other people don't know. And I can help alleviate the tension and stress associated with negotiating. So set about helping change people's perspective on negotiating, particularly focused on Australians, because we were never taught this at school, and the first time we tend to negotiate is when we have no other choice. So that was really my focus as the business evolved.
We'll come back to the book afterwards, but that actually did evoke a question. It's something that we had covered before we recorded. You said education, we're not really trained to negotiate, and you said it's particularly strange. Before we go into the value of what these skills actually bring to you as a business person and as a human being, do they train in any other countries like the negotiating at school?
Great question. Not particularly, but it's often that lifestyles are different. So in Australia, we are influenced heavily by the taboos in our culture. So don't say what you do want, don't say what you don't want, don't talk about money, oh my gosh, because that's rude. So you add that layer to our culture, then that we don't have it as an everyday, let alone being taught at schools. So different cultures talk about money, different cultures will barter every day. There's lots of cultures that don't even have price tags in general because you're buying from markets all the time. So it's inbuilt in that culture. That's the difference in Australia. We don't have that.
Yeah, right. Okay, I understand. So, I get a quote and then I just pay whatever the quote is rather than actually going and saying, hey, hang on a second, should this be a better price? And kind of starting to ask questions. I can see that for sure, particularly going over to Thailand and then you go to the markets and all of a sudden you're in the thick of negotiating, which I actually quite enjoy whilst being over there. So great. So look, once again, I'm appreciative of you being here. I'm appreciative of the topic that we're going to cover today. And I know that one of the precursors, just to set up the environment for the episode, because we've got accommodation owners, we've got managers, we've got people working in big hotels, we've got people that have small short-term rentals that are listening in the audience. And I know that you've done almost billions of dollars worth of deals and negotiating through your time. The things that we talk about today, are they going to be relevant to our audience?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I talk about if we can become more confident in negotiating anything, then that's going to have tributaries across your whole world. So whether that's negotiating as a family unit, whether that's trying to get out of a parking fine, or whether that's a really big partner relationship that you have that's going to have multiple legs to it and go for many years. Absolutely. I try and make things as practical as possible, and look at it on a surface, on a base level, so that you can build on it from just experience.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thinking, is that this isn't only about coaching, but it's actually, we can find really practical elements that we can take and put into our accommodation business, because there are different aspects of the business where you would be negotiating. And feel free to kind of jump in, Sam, and go, hey, hold on about that one or that one. But I really see that there's different stakeholders that we're working with when we're in accommodation. So we've got the guests, and there's a potential room for negotiating there in all sorts of different manners. Today, I definitely don't want to be covering off negotiating through issues and that sort of stuff. I think that's there, but I'd like to focus on more business improvement, profitability, and return on investment, that sort of thing. We've got the guests, we've got staff members, so be it cleaning, front of house, kitchen staff, depending on the business size. We might be negotiating with them. We might be negotiating with suppliers, which is one of the focus areas that I want to focus on today. And then the last one, also that has really come up for me. Oh, there's actually two more, sorry. One of them is local area, so community. So the local people that are living next door to you, the people you have noise complaints with, that sort of thing. And the last one is regulation and politics. So talking to government, talking to the local government areas and that sort of thing, and sort of negotiating with them. So those are the sort of the 5 kind of key areas where I really see accommodation owners benefiting from those skills. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that unfortunately, it's not unique to this industry, which is good for this conversation today. But I also think that there's some patterns of behaviour that happen in and around a lot of corporates and a lot of businesses, that we are facing these challenges that are coming from multiple directions. That means that, oh gosh, I don't know how to have an uncomfortable conversation in one area, let alone 5 areas. So if we can solve it in one area, hopefully it has those learnings and knock-ons into the others as well. So hopefully we can solve a few things through those conversations.
Okay, cool. So let's start off with breaking down the supplier side of things, and then we can kind of see where we go. I'd really love you to sort of take us through a little bit of a journey of maybe, I don't know if we start off with mindset, whether we're looking, like, are we just looking at someone who's like, we're about to negotiate for a new contract? Is that when we're starting to negotiate? Where does this all fit in, and where do we get started? Yeah,
good question, Bart. Thanks. I think the first position is, where do I feel comfortable? So we don't just go, oh, today I'm going to go and negotiate. Whee! I mean, we do that when we have to have a conversation that we've been putting off, or a particular meeting that's coming up, but often we don't realise how many times that we negotiate. So I think the first piece is mindset. It is, how do I approach a conversation that I know that I have to have? So firstly, actually, I say to people, if you don't like negotiating, don't call it that. It's a series of conversations, or I'm going to have a conversation with somebody. Because really, that's all we're doing. It's just there's this connotation associated with negotiating that it's going to be a fight. And it does not have to be a fight. There's definitely people who love that. They love the punch on. So for them, we have to have a different set of tactics. But most people, we just want to go and have a conversation and get an outcome. Where it comes a little bit unstuck is that we come at it from different places, and we don't have the right vocabulary to actually ask those questions. So we need to actually bank a whole series of things that we would ask ahead of time. So preparation is key. I think, we talk about in my team spending 70% of your time in preparation for any meeting. Now, it's a percentage, it's not an allocation of time. And we work with farmers up in the Northern Territory, and we say to them, from the farmhouse to the gate is enough time for you to think through, what is it that I really want, what is it that I don't want, and then being clear about when would I walk away. And then the next layer is, how will I walk away?
Yeah.
So we get frustrated, generally speaking, because we don't have the words to say, and I think preparation can change that for everyone.
Can we start breaking that down? I'm loving this already. My mind's going crazy. So the first step that you said was, what do I want? Was that what it was?
Yeah. The first step is actually, we have a 4-stage methodology that we work through called APEC. So the first step is acceptance. So accepting that you will participate in a negotiation. So you may have to have a very uncomfortable conversation with a staff member or a supplier or all these people we've talked about. So the first bit is get your head in the game and say, right, I will have that conversation today. I will make that happen. So psychologically, once you commit, most people who are doers will get it done, will actually do it.
Can I ask you a question about that? Because you've mentioned it a few times, that you kind of have to prepare yourself, or that it can be an uncomfortable conversation. In my mind, negotiating, I never really approach it from an uncomfortable point of view, and that's probably because I understand that the end result, if it doesn't go kind of the way that I wanted it to, it wasn't meant to be, or that there is that walk away point. Why have you said uncomfortable a few times?
Yeah, it's a good pickup, but I didn't notice I'd said it so much. It can be fun, yay, let's go now.
well, right, like for me it is. It's like, oh cool, great, we get to, because I see it as a process for working together and for collaboration, right? And I don't see it as a necessarily when negotiating has got that negative connotation. For me, it doesn't sit there. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I know obviously you work with so many thousands of people, and a lot of people would go, it's something I don't want to touch too much. But what do you think it is that would lead you to kind of frame it in that way?
Yeah, I think because most of the people that we work with, we are talking about the tight end of it. We're talking about those difficult ones. For the most part, we are just going to have a conversation. So I guess I do err on the end of, this one is one I've been putting off. So we have a lot of situations that people will kick the can down the road and not have that conversation. So that's why I probably land in the uncomfort space. But I think it's so big on the spectrum. So, but you're clearly in the end of, we've got 4 personas of negotiators, and one of them is mastery. You sound like somebody who's edging towards mastery if you're not there already. So that's very comfortable, very confident. Never see it as a hostile situation. But the bulk of people, 87% of people, are apprehensive about negotiating. So that's massive. And it is a US stat, but we believe, based on our years of data, it's actually in Australia, it's probably about 75% on a good day. So it's still damn high. So most people are seeing this as an what's the word I'm using? Excuse me, adversary situation, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah. And do you think as well, though, that there's an element of having the more you have at stake, the more uncomfortable it all becomes?
No, I think for me, I still get nervous when I go into a big deal. So there's a difference between the nervousness and then there's the apprehension piece of it. So it's where you sit on that. So you always should be nervous. If there's a lot at stake, it's nervous. It's more, I guess that uncomfort often comes with, we often negotiate with the same people. So if Gary is difficult today and he's difficult last time and the time before that and the time before that, you're already like, I gotta have that conversation with Gary.
Beautiful. Okay, so acceptance was the first part of this puzzle. So if we're going to go, we're always bringing it back towards the supplier side. So I really want people to think about, and we're going to keep on talking about this. So this could be for relationships with current suppliers, future suppliers, that sort of thing. But we'll touch on that after. So we've now accepted that we're going to have to go and have an uncomfortable conversation. And what was the next step?
Yeah, so the next one is preparation. So prepare. So I guess often part of acceptance also is deciding that we're going to just have a review. We're going to look at our P&L, we're going to look at all of our suppliers and determine how long since we've reviewed their contracts, how long since we've actually gone to tender for the work that is required. Because often we get busy bringing in new people and we forget to review the existing relationships. So that's really, I guess that's a line in the sand to say, right, well, we'll pull out the P&L this afternoon and we'll go, yep, these people have been here for a while, let's have a sit down and have a chat about that. So preparing for that conversation is important. Determining, well, what does that look like and what are our benchmarks? So if you are going to do a tender, then how will we assess whether somebody is better than the people that we're working with right now, and then how will we promote it, etc. So there's a piece of work to be done, I guess, in first instance, to actually just wake up and realize that, oh shit, we haven't actually checked our P&L, we haven't actually had a conversation with our suppliers for a long time.
Yeah. And I think that COVID was a really interesting one, because that was a point where a lot of people were actually having to go out and renegotiate and maybe not have as much data as they also need to be able to go in with a position of strength within a negotiating sphere. But I know that a lot of people definitely were looking at this sort of stuff and having to use these sorts of skills. So we've prepared, we understand that we've got something that we need to tackle. And then what were the last couple of steps?
Yeah, so in your preparation is about, okay, well, when we get into the room, which is engage, the next phase, then how might that go? So in your preparation, it's about thinking, right, what's our ideal situation? What will we settle for, and then what will we walk away from it? So every single situation has those three parameters. So currency is different, so money, people, time, it could be your currency, but having a think about those three different levels in your preparation is really important. And then, thinking about, if it is Gary that you're renegotiating with, that you've spoken to before and you know he's quite difficult, what can you preempt that he's going to say to you? And then when he says it, rather than going, oh, that thing again that really drives me nuts, you've got a response ready. And so we can play a little bit of a game with Gary. So poor old Gary. We can play a game with him.
It's always Gary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always Gary and Karen. And so when Gary says that line that we're so ready for him to say, rather than annoy us, we're like, oh, I'm ready for this. I've got a response ready. So we actually keep ourselves on the level, and even keel when we're in the room.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to, because I don't know if you're going to cover this again later on, but those whole 3 points of the, what do I want, and then you said that was time, money, price, whatever it is, and then you said what I'm prepared to walk away with. Are we gonna bring that in later, or do we need to tackle this right now?
It naturally ebbs into the engage phase, because when you're in the room, because you've prepared and you know what your position's going to be, and you've been able to articulate why is that your position. So what research have you done in your preparation phase to actually be ready for counter arguments? I don't want to use the word argument, but counter discussion. So when you get into the room, really what we're trying to do is explore, where is it that we already agree and where is it that we differ? And then focus on where we differ. Because what happens is often we have protracted negotiations because we're focusing on the whole lot. So if we can narrow that down and ask questions around, well, how did you come up with your valuation? Can you explain it to me? Then we're having this, we're focused on these little pieces, and then we're actually asking questions rather than having this fight, so to speak, that's happening in the middle there. So yeah, once you're in the room, that's when your walkaway position is probably the most important one there. To know when, your valuation is this of the contract and my valuation is this of the contract. So why bother? There's a lot, unless there's no other supplier, then this bridge is too far.
Yeah.
So let's call it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. Just that sort of walkaway point. And one thing that really strikes me is when we go to an auction and we see the price of a house and we've got an emotional investment, and quite typically, I think the advice is always to have some sort of a walk away point. But then the emotions take over, and you get cajoled by the process and the feelings that you want to win, and then you got the realtor as well shouting at you or whispering to you or whatever, trying to get you to keep on going. And we talked about being prepared, and we have a walk away point, saying, hey, you know what, this is not going to work for me unless it's at this particular stage. How do we deal with the changes in the walkaway point through that negotiating process?
Yeah, again, back to prepare. So we, when it's an emotional purchase, you have to factor that into your preparation. So we practice with people. We put our case and test our preparation with other people, and it's so important when it is an emotional purchase, whether that is an auction, whether that is a pair of shoes, a wedding dress, a watch, a Maserati, whatever it is, your thing. You know that, okay, I've said this is my bottom price, but then you have to go, nah, what's your emotional bottom price? So you actually have to have a realistic conversation that I know I'm going to go, but I love it. And so what do you do? And then what is your actual hard bottom line there? So yeah, it's a tough one, because I've seen people, and I've been wedding dress shopping with friends, and it's like, well, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that, and it's like, but it's beautiful, and now I've got the tiara. Okay, cool, you wanted it, there's the emotional piece. So for me, in those, particularly with that dress situation, I took my friend and said, let's go and have a drink and then come back, and if you still feel like that, so you've got to have a circuit breaker as well, and this comes back to gameplay. So when you're in a discussion with a supplier, then when you are, maybe you're not that far apart as we were talking about before, maybe you're closer, but there's still a bridge there. Maybe it's like, you know what, let's have a time out, let's get some other thoughts into this and get some more fresh air thinking into this, and then maybe we can cut it a different way. So maybe it's not you give me this and I'll give you that. Maybe there's another bit more creative way to approach it, but we actually need that time to go away and think about what that solution might be.
Gotcha. And how about if I played a little bit of devil's advocate, kind of just be really evil? What if the goal of my negotiation isn't about trying to find common ground? It's just about trying to really do maximum, super capitalist. I just need maximum profitability. That's all I really care about, and finding common ground isn't really my priority at all. I'm a business owner, god damn it.
Yeah.
What is the what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, it's tough, because you got to look at drivers. So we're all in a, it's a commercial outcome that we're seeking here. So we have to have real conversations about the realities. I need to make money and you need to make money, or I need to sell this and you need to buy that. Whatever that thing is that we're exchanging on. We just need to stop and ask some questions. So it depends on if it's a group environment. If it's one person being difficult and you're in a group, don't call it out in the room. Call a time out, have a conversation with that person on the side and say, look, I'm not sure really what's going on here, but let's have a chat about what's behind this. So maybe, if you've done 5 negotiations with this person and you screwed them at one point accidentally, then that might be coming back to bite you right now. But if it's just a very difficult person who is just hard-nosed, then if you really need to have that sidebar conversation. So I often talk about, would you negotiate, would you be happy for your dad or your mum to sit next to you when you're negotiating, based on your approach to it? And I know I look back at times when I had massive budgets and I was that person. I was just trying to get the right bottom dollar, and it's like, it's not good. Because especially when you're in a relationship with a supplier who you have to see and spend time with and work with once the deal's done. If you're dealing with just a broker, you kind of have imprimatur to go a little bit harder. But why? Australia's such a small place, it's going to bite you at some point.
That's a great quote. That's a great quote. Australia is such a small place. And funnily enough, my view is that the world is becoming a smaller and smaller place. And therefore, it takes very, very little for things to come and bite you because everything is very interconnected and people can find you very, very easily by doing a search on LinkedIn or checking out your Google My Business or Facebook. And so I think that there's a lot more damage that you can do by getting things wrong through this process. Cool. So I'm loving the conversation. I'm loving these little tidbits of huge value that you're deriving. Just to finish off so we've kind of got our walk away point. We've gone in and then we've kind of tried to find common ground and work on the parts where you are divergent and try to bring them together, and not focus on the parts where you do agree. And then what's next?
Yeah, so closing. So the close is so important, and again, particularly for Australians, because we're very laissez-faire, very laid back as a nation, which is what we're famous for. However, that's really unhelpful at the deals table. So we've all walked away from meetings going, I'm not sure who's taking the actions and what's happening next. But that was a great meeting, guys. Great meeting. Excellent. Thanks. So the same in negotiations. So we need to be clear on, have we closed up? So is it a yes, no, maybe today? So what happens next? So if we're closing because we've reached agreement, have we reached agreement on the whole thing, or have we reached agreement on part of it? And then what's next? So it doesn't need to go through a procurement round next, which we kind of should have asked that earlier in our preparation, is that what is the approvals process? But if we haven't, this is where you need to be very, very clear that, have we actually closed this deal? Are we shaking hands today or touching elbows or whatever we do today? I don't know. So then it's, if we have reached agreement on certain things, let's put those in the can and let's set up another meeting to talk about the other pieces that we're still not aligned on. And don't set up an hour-long meeting. Set up a 15-minute meeting to just talk about this piece and this piece. Because otherwise, if it's an hour, you'll fill it with, and let's just go back to that piece and let's come back to here. So we really want to get away from protracted discussions. And then if we don't reach agreement, so how you leave is what people remember about you, was what I was once told. So you can throw the desk up and just go, this is ridiculous. Or you can actually have a pre-prepared line for it. So you kind of have a spidey sense on how it's going to go beforehand. If you're blindsided, then this probably doesn't apply, but oftentimes our gut will tell us, I think this might go pretty well, or I think this might not go so well. So have a line prepared for that. It's like, right, we are miles apart, and I don't think we're going to reach agreement, so let's leave it for today. And then we need to make sure that we're coming back and talking about, well, what's the next steps on that? So, I'm a bit agitated by you right now, Gary. So I'm going to call you on Tuesday, and I'm going to set up where to from here. Just right now, I just want to finish this meeting, if that's all right. So really looking at the different options for how we're closing it. And then that way there's no ambiguity. Everybody knows what's happening. All right, great. So Bart, you're going to do that next, and you're going to do that by when, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to talk to procurement, and I'm going to talk to our PR team, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that by next week. And then there'll be another meeting in 3 weeks' time. So it's really deliberate about where we're going to from here.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to focus on that little point that you mentioned before about kind of burning those relationships and burning those suppliers at the end of the day. And obviously for different organizations, it's going to matter in different ways. But I find, like you said, it's a small world out there. So even if you're burning a small supplier, it could bite you in a way that you can't envisage, because they could be affiliated with someone that will be of use to you down the line. Yeah. We've kind of words of advice, I guess, would be what it is, because everyone can find a good way to get an excuse to get out of it. But what would your advice be to when you know the deal is just going to fall over, you just can't make it happen, and you've got to choose supplier B over A? What kind of advice could you give?
It's a tough one, because our default position is we don't want to disappoint people, but the reality is it is business, so we just need to tell them the truth. These are the reasons why. and we really like you guys, but we can't work with you guys on this basis unless you think that there's an opportunity for something different, a different mix that makes up for it. So less cash, more this, more that, more less of that. So it's really about that creative solutioning together. So, we just need to be as honest as possible and look at, if you are in a meeting, in a situation where you have got frustrated and you've lost it, let's just be polite. Like, I'm a big advocate for people are people, we're human beings, so you are going to lose it from time to time. It's how you recover that matters. So if you go home and then wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I don't know whether I said what I wanted to say there. I need to call up and apologise and say, look, this is what I was trying to say. I'm sorry I got frustrated and I got, wasn't able to articulate what I wanted. Can we keep going with this discussion? So you're kind of putting it out there that you've made a mistake. You're asking for permission to keep going. It's their opportunity to say, no, I don't want to talk to you anymore, which is very hard. I find it very hard to believe that people would say that. So it's about recovering. So, unless you burn a bridge that you don't really know, there's always a way to come back from that. And that's teamwork as well. So for me, my tell is that I go red in the face, and if I go red in the neck, my team know to call a timeout. So if someone's frustrating me, that Sarah or Tanya will just be like, maybe we'll just have a cup of tea. So your teammates knowing you and your tells is really important when you're having a game strategy in negotiations as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to my analogy of doing the markets in Thailand, I remember categorically that my partner and I were both already pre-planned what we were going to be doing to then create 2 negotiating points through the whole process. Yeah. So look, so many great little tidbits. I just want to wrap it up and finish it off, and I do want to talk about your book and what it is, and we may have a bit of a giveaway as well of the book. But one thing that you mentioned was suppliers. Obviously, when we're negotiating new contracts and new deals, then we're looking at a multitude of suppliers and then coming to the right conclusions and then drilling down on what's important to us and that sort of thing. And then making the deals. And then you said, we said, so we've got new suppliers, but then we've got suppliers where we need to go and renegotiate with them and go, hey, I just want a better deal, or we haven't approached this for such a long time, or sometimes we won't even do it because it's like, we best leave that alone because it's working right now, and if we do anything to mess that up, then our business is going to fall over or have it could have much bigger consequences by kind of rattling that cage. Any tips and advice about going and renegotiating deals?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you can leave it well enough alone. I mean, the last 2 years, some things you just have to leave well enough alone. If it's working, just keep going with it. But I think, it's just about a conversation. So where are you guys at? Do you think this relationship's still working under the current terms? Because we're not so sure. There's pieces we'd like to talk about, and what do you think? It doesn't have to be okay, we're coming here, we're in it, we're going to get in a room and smash this out together and make it really tough. I think it's, the great thing about supplier relationships is most of the time they become your mates. So, it's a conversation with a mate. Now, obviously, we're in the room. And I have had relationships like this where people have become my friend who are a supplier. And I need to say to them, look, in this room, where this is my job and that's your job. Let's put the mates at the door. And that has some interesting things that come from it. But I definitely think that there's no reason to avoid those conversations. It's as long as it starts out as just that. It's just a conversation to see where it's at, because everybody might actually say, you know what, it's not that bad. Or that if you're thinking that it's not working, then they're probably thinking it's not working as well. So, it's kind of obvious where things aren't working in those long-term relationships, and sometimes it's just sitting down and having that chat over it and seeing, okay, maybe we don't need to wholesale change the relationship. Maybe there's just little pieces that we all need to iron out together.
Gotcha. So, but then from what you said at the start, was it all stems down to looking at your P&L, and I guess P&L is one of the metrics that you would think, and then if things are working, right? Like, hey, cleaning company, you keep on falling over, or linen company, it's been 3 years, you're not delivering on whatever you promised, that sort of thing. So those can be those prompts, and you've got to find those opportunities to have those conversations. I love it. I love it, Sam. You're awesome. A couple of things that we're going to talk about just to close off the show, and this is a bit of a thank you for your time. There's two things that I'm interested in. One is you've got so much knowledge and skills. If someone wanted to engage you, right? Like, what kind of business sizes are you working with? Are you doing any one-on-one coaching with execs? What kind of who would you want? Like, if you said my ideal client is. Who would it be?
Great question. We have lots of different groups that we work with. So we work with, from a base level, my thing is about advocating for change to help people learn to love negotiating. So from the books to our on-demand programs online, and then we have our group coaching programs where we have senior leaders come together and learn through live deal negotiation. So they bring challenges, and then they go through a 5-week process through our Conscious Negotiator program, and really tackle those problems in a peer learning environment. And then from a strategic perspective, so big deals, game changer deals as we call them, then we can do consulting work for people. So making sure that they're very comfortable to go to the deals table. So we don't tend to negotiate on behalf of people. It's about upskilling people, so capability building is key. So doing it with the team, preparing for it, and then we can be gun for hire and go and negotiate with your team. And then we feel like that has a whole learning process associated with it as well. So so there's a lot we deal with. So people at all different levels and all different industries. So my team have backgrounds kind of across industry. So I know I've been a bit evasive on your question there, but anybody who wants to learn how to become a better negotiator.
Well, that's good. At least you're very clear about that. And I think that the methodology would be to look at your website and then maybe fill out a contact form or something saying, hey, this is my situation, or this is what I'm interested in. If I was one of the ones that for me I would use your services for would be for a next job negotiation. It's one of the weakest areas of my skill set, actually, is because I feel like I've got so much vested to it, and by the time I'm at the negotiating table, I want the job, right? So it doesn't. I really disempowered by that. Do you guys do any of that kind of stuff?
Well, in my first book, I Love Negotiating, there's actually a whole chapter in there about negotiating a pay rise, which is obviously linked to a new role. So we actually give that away on our website at no charge. There's a free chapter download that people can get, which will help them with that.
And what a great lead into the new book. Yes. So tell us about the new book, the new bestseller.
Yeah, bestseller on Amazon as of yesterday. Yay! So I'm very excited about that. So Negotiate Your Worth, which I have a copy right here, which we are going to give away some copies on that today. So basically, Negotiate Your Worth was written from my learnings as a business owner. So I thought, coming from big deal land, that closing deals would not be a problem for me. Turns out it was. Turns out that negotiating your worth when you sell your brain is really challenging. So really understanding, okay, what's the book that I wanted someone to give me on my first day as a business owner? So I also believe that we always remember that teacher who was fun. So learning should be a fun experience. So what I did was identify the 8 characteristics of powerful business negotiators, and then I found the attributes that are aligned to Aussie animals to each of those characteristics. So the book centered around the animals, and then through the process, because business owners are tight on time as well, we have a self-assessment tool in the front of the book, which basically tells you what power animal you are strong in right now and which power animal you need to spend a bit more time on. So you actually can fast track your way through the book based on that, and you can just jump to the chapter that is where you need to focus on, and then learn about that animal and its characteristics. So often talk about, sit down with your business coach and work through it together over time, and then hopefully you'll feel more confident through those little tips and tricks and putting them into place, that's the most important part, actually actioning it, and then you'll become a great negotiator and feel more and more confident as time goes by.
I love it. So the moral of the story is pick up the book. Even if you think you're an amazing negotiator, pick up the book, figure out where your weaknesses are, and then start working on them and polishing them up. Sam, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insights and your skills and your expertise in this field. I think it's a fascinating one. I think that I would encourage anyone that's listening to manage those relationships, look at your P&Ls, look at what's going on in your business, and then if you do need to go and make some changes, that's when you would make sure that you've got those skills and that before you get going, you get prepared. Folks, thanks a lot for tuning into the Accommodation Show. We do really appreciate it. We appreciate a like and a subscribe. It means an awful lot to us, and it also means that we can keep on bringing invaluable content like this to you. Sam, thanks once again. Really appreciate it, and have an awesome day.
Great. Thanks, Bart. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care.